Hello, gentlemen. My name is John Zito. We all know what we're going on here. I am born and raised in Stamford, 53 years. Went to Stevens School. Got bussed over when they knocked it down when I was in second grade. I went to Roxbury. Then I moved to New Hope Towers. Then I went to Willard Burdick Middle School, which is gone. And then I went to Ripplong High School, and they canceled the hockey program down. Then I went to West Hill to play hockey. And then I went to University of Colorado. I played 5 unofficial games, but I wasn't too fond of school because I'm a working man. Here's my hands to show. I didn't go to college. I just decided to go to work like a middle-class man. Worked the Biggs Auto Glass, got in the glass trade, heavy equipment operator, got into the equipment. Then I found a good home when someone told me, Roger Arnold, he told me, when you focus on something, John, you go for it, you do it. And so I got into the oil trade and I focused on it. I built myself a great business. I'm a one-man army. My wife worked for me, and the guys couldn't believe it. Here comes my wife pulling out a vacuum cleaner that was sucking up soot in the boiler rooms with me. But now she moved on. She's doing great. And my business right now is going great. Now get on to my father. My past here is, like I already just told you where I came from. My father was a head garbage truck driver in the 1960s. He retired in 75. I'm what you call a late bloomer. And boy, am I a late bloomer. My mother was born in 1920 here in Stamford. My father came here in the 40s. So my grassroots, again, grassroots are in Stamford, Connecticut. Stamford was a town. And I couldn't find the books that my father gave me. If I brought you the books, as you gentlemen, you'd know what Stamford was like back in the days. What will make me as good for the city of Stamford as a mayor? Folks, I know every ins and outs of city of Stamford. Who's doing the job, who's not doing the job, what's going on with the sewer treatment plant, what's going on with the highway department, fire department, police department, every nick and cranny. And I think that I could bring the best for Stamford. One tax cut for a year. Everybody goes, how are you going to do a tax cut for a year? Very carefully, but I can't explain it now because if I become mayor, that's when I can bring it out. I can do wonders for the city of Stamford. There's things that out there that I could pull a rabbit out of a hat. Yes, I could. There's schools that need to be done. Al Barbarati's not here. Why is that? Me. If there's anybody knows about that, I did it. I went after him. I was the pit bull. I saved the city of Stamford some money getting rid of him. There's a lot of waste out there. I know about the waste. Remember, every custodian, every janitor, custodian, town worker that works for the city of Stamford, either I went to school with them or I know them. And they tell me what's going on in the city of Stamford. And it's not nice. If we have leftover money on a certain budget, oh, we got to spend it, because if we don't spend it, then we're not going to get the extra money. So why do we got to spend $3,500 on light bulbs? There's a lot of things that you gentlemen out here that don't know what goes on behind doors. And I'm not knocking Mayor Martin. He doesn't know what's going on behind closed doors there. This town is big. This is a big town. It ain't small like it used to be. So folks, I'm here to tell you the truth, what's going on in the city of Stamford. And if there's a storm or anything, I'm out there working. I'll be out there pulling a branch off. I won't be sitting home while they got these other guys going. No, I'm the hardworking guy. When you see another gentleman working and get a flat tire on the side of the road, I'll pull over. I can get my hands dirty. I'm not worrying about it. Is that what you got? If you guys want that as a mayor for your city, the working guy that will run the city for you, then folks, that'll be me. Thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for inviting me.
Mr. Michelson?
I want to thank the the State Street Debating Society for having us tonight and hosting us, and for me in particular for giving us the opportunity to meet you. I moved here from Manhattan 40 years ago with my wife, Shelley. We made Stamford our home. We bought a house here, raised our children here, and have been involved in the community. Stamford is our home, and we love Stamford. It feels different, though. Maybe you've noticed the difference also. While our vision for our lives and families and businesses remain clear, it seems the city has had no visible long-term vision going forward. And we pay the price with higher taxes, basic quality of life concerns, and everyday residents seemingly ignored. I can no longer sit by and watch. For this reason, I'm proud to declare my candidacy for mayor of Stamford. Taxes have gone up over 12% in the past 3.5 years. This year alone, the city budget has increased by 5%, a cost that is being paid by 90% of us, the taxpayers. The average homeowner is currently paying $950 more in taxes per year. Stamford enjoys a AAA bond rating. The bond agencies grant the rating not because of astute stewardship, but because of the willingness to raise taxes and our ability to pay. In other words, to service debt to protect bondholders. The current budget is structurally built upon spending, taxing, and borrowing as an alternative to cost-cutting and government efficiency. In 2016 alone, our pension fund investment lost $19 million, despite an increase in the Dow of 13%, the S&P 9.5%, and the NASDAQ 7.5%. Figures for the 2017 pension were supposed to have been made public in September, then in October, and now won't be released until after the election. We can't imagine what those will look like. Stamford is presently for sale as to development interests that will gladly pay higher permit fees as complicit land use agencies routinely grant text and map changes for ever-increasing density that leads to congestion, overcrowding of our neighborhood streets and neighborhoods. In December, that will stop when I'm your mayor. To eliminate the backload of zoning and quality of life violations, I will supplement the city inspection staff with outsourced inspectors that work under the direction of the zoning enforcement officer for a limited period of time. Stamford's ordinances and regulations will be rigorously enforced. I will end the hiring binge in the mayor's office. How many high-priced executive assistants and special assistants are needed? And what are we paying for? And what is the benefit we are there providing? For 3.5 years, City Hall has turned a deaf ear to the people of Stamford and the quality of life issues, overcrowding, parking, streets riddled with potholes, crumbled infrastructure, and regulations that were not enforced and only started to be addressed once concerns were made public in my campaign. As your mayor, I will advocate for you every day. I'm Barry Michelson. I was born in New York. I have a master's in urban planning and a political science degree from a school in the Northwest. I started working in the Ocean Hill, Brownsville, Bedford-Stuyvesant sections of New York, doing planning and management work. Went on to accept a directorship for the Planning and Zoning Commission in Fairfield, Connecticut, and I'll discuss those a little bit later. But I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you again for having me here, and look forward to answering any questions you folks will have.
Mr. Martin. What's going on here? No, I think it's mine. Slipping and sliding. I too would like to thank the State Street Debating Society. Herb. Phil. Thank you for having us here. A little quick rundown on David Martin. I grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. My mom was a school teacher. My dad was an attorney and then a judge. I went to MIT. I got a degree in science and biology, and then I got a second degree in economics. Went to the Congressional Budget Office. You know, when they talk about scoring for healthcare, they talk about the CBO. That's where I worked shortly after it was formed. I worked in national security. I then went to Stanford Business School, where I got an MBA with a concentration in public management. I came back, worked for Conrail in Philadelphia, and then came up to this area because that was where my bride had decided to move to. So I came up here, asked Judy to marry me. We moved into Stamford. We thought this was a fantastically diverse community that had welcomed us. We thought there was an opportunity for professional growth. We thought this was a place where we could raise our kids. So we moved in. We've had a wonderful life. We raised 2 daughters, both who graduated from West Hill High School, and both are doing very well out there in the real world, as we say. My wife worked for Pitney Bowes for a long time and then became a reading teacher at Northeast School. I started at PepsiCo and then eventually ended up at the Michael Allen Company, where I was an owner, partner, and the CFO of a multi-million-dollar payroll. Over that time, I served on the Board of Representatives for 26 years. I was elected its president for 8. I think you know I ran for mayor once, didn't quite make it. Came back, got on the Board of Finance, and was chairman of the Financial Policy Committee, and then ran for mayor. And I've been your mayor, and it's been a great honor and privilege to be your mayor for the last 4 years. I would also add that Judy and I formed the Starfish Connection, which was targeted at kids of low socioeconomic status who we believe should be able to get to college, and we bring them in the 3rd grade, and 10 years later, we hope to get them to college. That we started that program 10 years ago. Judy passed away in November, I think you know. 3 weeks later, our first student was accepted into Tufts, and those first 3 students we started, 2 are going to Tufts, 1's going to UConn, and I'm very proud of what Judy was able to do in that program. But let me get right to the point. You know, Herb was talking about how wonderful this community is, and he loves to be here. It's the best community he knows. The reality is that's what the majority of people think. Stamford is the strongest and most successful city in the state, and most of the people in the state recognize that. And with the ongoing state budget crisis, there's a great deal of concern about the state's financial health. The state and many of its cities are wrestling with budget deficits and saddled with sizable liabilities. You all know that. Hartford is facing possible bankruptcy. Many other communities are struggling, and recently, S&P just put 9 Connecticut municipalities on a negative credit watch. So where are we? Well, we got our financial house in order, and that was one of the first priorities. We've had 4 straight years of budget surplus, and although I don't want to get into technicalities, we've actually had, for the first time in over 50 years, we've started funding our long-term liabilities for pension and OPEB, and for the first time in over 50 years, we've actually had a structural surplus, not just a budget surplus. We now have a AAA rating from Standard & Poor's and a AAA rating from Fitch's, and there are a lot of criteria. Let me tell you, they look very closely at the books, and they ask a lot of questions about how we're managing Stamford and how we're going to sit vis-a-vis the state. Our unemployment rate is better than the state average and better than all the other cities in the state, all the major cities. Our job market continues to improve. We now have a 3.8% unemployment rate as of August, and unlike the trend that we see in other cities and towns, and if you want to think GE or Aetna or Lexicon, Stamford has been attracting large businesses that are expanding. And in fact, we saw it in the newspaper, I think just this last weekend, setting the standard. That was about Stamford, and the discussion about how the other cities are looking to emulate what we are doing here in Stamford. It isn't just the large businesses. You don't know how many small businesses I've opened up the doors as they open the doors as we have those other things. So we're even filling the infamous hole in the ground. So no, not everything is perfect. I'm quick to admit that. Much remains to be done, but you should know something. I'm not slapping on Band-Aids, and I'm not making empty promises. I'm making structural changes. That takes longer, but it gets the job done, and that's the course we're on. I am proud of this city we live in, absolutely. and I believe it is a city where people want to be, and what we've been doing is making it a better place to live. And I trust that you will see that we still have a lot to do, and that you will let me continue as mayor for the next 4 years. Thank you very much.
I can tell already the size of the candidates is going to give me some exercise. So we'll begin with our questions, and we will do the questions in the reverse order of the introductory remarks, which means we'll begin with Mr. Martin. So the question to each of you that I'll ask you to limit your response to just 2 minutes, enforced by my good friend Tom Casone, is as follows. And the topic is education. What do you think of the quality of our public schools, and what, if anything, would you do to enhance either or both the quality or perception of the quality of our public education system? Gentlemen, I think it's probably more efficient that you take the questions seated. I'll get you each a microphone that should be working. David doesn't?
Not yet, it doesn't. Hello, hello. Oh, my goodness. So the question again was, I was working on my microphone, Bill.
That's okay. The question is, what do you think of the quality of our public school system? And what, if anything, would you do to enhance either the quality of the system or the perception of the quality of the system? That's the question.
As I mentioned previously, we raised 2 daughters in Stamford. Both of them went to public schools. Both of them graduated from West Hill. One went to Cornell. One went to UPenn, and I can tell you that both report back that they were extremely well prepared to move on into college. And they're both doing extremely well in the job market as we speak, and they're both very happy. And both my wife and I credited the Stamford Public Schools to their success. Now, that isn't to say that we as parents didn't spend a lot of time making certain that our kids were taken care of. Absolutely. But I guess I come to the conclusion from my own personal experience that the school system is pretty good, but you have to make it, you have to make it work for you. And the question is, can we make it better? And I believe that we can. And so there are several things that are going on where I've already participated to trying to change the direction of our public schools. Now, one of the most important things is when I came into office, and you gentlemen might all well remember this, we had constant bickering that was going on the school board. And while I only had 1 vote, or 3 votes, I guess, for the Board of Education, nonetheless, when the election was up, I invited all the candidates to my conference room, and I talked about they have the right to say whatever they want. But as they continue forward, they should try to figure out what they're offering to make the school system better rather than constantly tearing it down. And particularly because we were looking for a new superintendent at the time. And I wanted a new superintendent not to look at a school system where the Board of Education was constantly bickering, but one that there was a positive, constructive activity. So I think we've made a positive change there, and I served as on the committee that selected the new superintendent. He's only had a year, and changing the direction of the public schools takes a long time. But between the legal help that we've done behind the scenes for the schools, as well as setting a new direction with the superintendent, I think we're on a much better course. We have a long way to go, but I think we're on the right course. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hold the red button. Your videographer would prefer that you use that mic because that one hums.
Oh,
Yeah.
is it easier to just pass the mic? Should we do
I
that?
don't know. He just says that one works, this one does not. So not so.
I don't mind standing up.
Okay. Tom, could you, is there enough wire to pass that all?
I'll know in a minute.
No, I'll stand up. I can go.
Can you just repeat the question, Bill, for a moment? Okay, thank you.
Can I repeat it from here?
Sure.
What do you think of the quality of our public schools, and what, if anything, would you do to enhance either or both the quality or the perception of quality of the public schools?
Okay. Firstly, I'd like to say that there are some students who do extremely well in our public school education system. They go to fine universities, they go to Yale, they go to Harvard, even MIT occasionally. But that doesn't mean that there are some students who are struggling. And the education system isn't too important. It has one important function. Number one, provide a constitutionally mandated requirement in this state, which is for basic education, and the other also for our property values. Folks want a quality school system when they move into our community. One of the things you notice when you see the reports from the various real estate sites is Stamford schools are not always rated that high. This past spring, U.S. World Report came out with a study of all the schools on a national basis. Stamford High School was, and both West Hill High School, both reported had a 90% graduation rate, extremely high. But when college readiness data, they showed that Stamford High School was 34% and West Hill was 37%. Clearly, we need to do more work to get our children up to standards, higher standards in this. When you start looking proficiency in math and science, also, and we do have a lot of non-English speaking students, but those were in sometimes the low 20s or high teens. So there clearly needs to be improvement, and the system has to work for everybody. So while we have one group that's doing very, very well, we need to work with those kids in the middle and that are not doing well. The mayor does have some limited power because he sits as a member of the board, but it is an elected board. But certainly to require and to put out and to request very dynamic performance standards is not unreasonable, because it's very important for our children as well as the investment we've all made in the community in terms of our biggest investment, our homes. Thank you.
Do you need me to repeat the question, or? No, sir, I'm just gonna go right with it. No need to repeat. It's too big for me. Gentlemen, in 2015, I ran for the Board of Education, okay? AFB was there, Al Barbarati. In the year, 2 years before that, I ran for mayor. Well, I found out that Al Barbarati got paid for fixing the sidewalks at Stamford High School near the gym. I tripped over him, so I got on his case. You got paid for it. How come it ain't fixed? No one got on him. But like I said to you folks before earlier, I know the custodians. I know what goes on in the high schools and what schools and what goes on where. And also how he demoed Springdale Elementary School. Did our mayor know then what was going on in his party? No, but I did. I brought it up to the public, letting everybody know, every taxpayer know what's going on. I guess I'm the guy with the gayuns telling everybody like it is. Folks, the Board of Education, I graduated. There's two fellow people in here graduated from the Board of Education for Ripplewam High School. My daughter, all FCX softball pitcher, took Stamford High School 3 times to the States. Okay? Stevens School I went to, Roxbury, Willard, Burdick, Ripplewam, and then West Hill. My daughter went to West Hill. The softball was jammed with Tommy Pierre. Then we moved so my daughter could play for Stamford High School. Man, that's quick. 30 seconds left. Stamford Public Schools is doing great, but we got snagged. We had teacher with kids, cost us a lot of money. Lots of money it cost us. And what happened to that poor student? He got shot in the head in Bridgeport for buying drugs. The superintendent's doing good. The Board of Education is doing very well now. What we have up there now. We got rid of some bad apples, and now we got some good apples. And my time is up. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Our next question concerns finances. As our infrastructure ages, there's obviously a need to replace it and to upgrade it. Our question is, has the city gone beyond its safe borrowing limits? If not, how much more borrowing is prudent? And what would your priorities as mayor be? If it's gone beyond its safe borrowing limits, how would you, as mayor, propose that the city function in the future? And Mr. Michelson, I think it's your turn.
Well, our safe borrowing limit has recently been increased from $25 to $30 million. And that's a formulation based on a lot of different criteria. As far as, you're talking about to construct our infrastructure?
Infrastructure, schools, those things, parks, whatever we would commonly bond for, I suppose. Fair question.
A fair question. Right now, I think we ought to really stop bonding. It used to be a time when we bonded just for major projects. Could be a school, could be a public works facility, some kind of major construction project. We seem to be borrowing on a much more routine basis. That should stop, because what it's doing is it's throwing our indebtedness and increasing our indebtedness. Right now, our net liability, or our liabilities have increased from $730 to $930 million. That's an increase of over $200 million. So we're really don't have a toleration or a tolerance to borrow much more. We have to start looking for efficiency and savings. One of the problems we have now with our road work, and the mayor started to undertake it, is the mere fact that we let our ongoing maintenance programs lapse. So and the projects kind of accumulated. What we have to do is start looking for more efficiencies, stop wasteful spending, and look to be appropriately sized, establish benchmarks for our staff and our labor. We've got to make sure our funds are invested properly, and also it also is a balanced need to keep our taxes somewhat moderately low, or at least affordable to the folks who live here. It's a tough question. We've had an ongoing problem because for years and years we've kind of been kicking the can down the road. And now we're up to a $930 million worth of liabilities. And one thing the most recent financial statements show is that our liabilities, or I should say our net liability, has increased by over almost $50 million, where we've lost asset value. This is just according to the statement. So there's a lot of things. Well, the mayor is stating that, yes, we're in an enviable position in some ways, but we're not in a situation where we have a lot of extra at this point, and we've got to be very, very diligent. And we've really got to think of how we can pare down, how we can live more modestly, not necessarily with less, but we've got to have more efficient delivery of services. I don't know if I answered it. It was a difficult.
I think you did.
I think your linebacker is sleeping over there. What are you doing? They're joking around. You gotta have some humor here, folks. Okay. Can you repeat that question to me, please? No, that's okay. You have to repeat the question. Last time this came up, my two colleagues were bickering on Channel 12 News. That was fun. I had a good kick on that one. The bond rate, Stamford bond rate, you can Google that. That's up. That's up out in the open. You can Google it and find out your bond rate and whatever's going on. But folks, there's a lot going on. Bond this. But that bond, I'm going to tell you about another bond. How about digging in our streets and we get these guys bonded digging a hole, okay? I'm going to go away from the bonding thing. But if I was mayor, I have a few choice people to hire to go over our bonds and about every other thing. But I'm going to go somewhere different with this. We're digging holes in streets, all right? I get a contract to dig a hole. And the gentleman digs a hole, fixes the job, puts blacktop on, he's still bonded, okay? How long does that bond last? Nobody knows, okay? Going down a year or two, we get a pothole, you get a flat tire, you're blowing your tire out. Mr. Singari goes down Chapin Avenue, blows a tire out because there's a pothole there. That guy was bonded. He didn't fix the pothole the proper way. After he dug, he didn't tamp. So the reason why I know all this stuff is because I was that guy in the street when you guys were driving around. I worked for Port Nova and Cavalier, C&P. I was out there digging in the street with those guys, middle of the night, fixing sewer jobs. Bonding, we got to keep the money with the bonding. You find out how long we hold the bond, let's hold it a little bit longer to find out how that street was going. If it's going right, then give him his bond back. But we make our money with bonds and our permits, our building permits. Now, I don't know if we're gonna go there tonight, but I'm gonna tell you right now, there's a lot of construction companies and contractors don't wanna build in Stamford because the permit department is all messed up. Call in, I know, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna go a little further, unless you're gonna tackle me. You call in and get a permit, to build a permit, to do anything, it's a joke. You gotta go through at least 5 different things to get a permit. Now, gentlemen, after tonight is over with, try to get a permit, try to get a homeowner's permit, and see what you gotta go through just to put a toilet in, a oil tank or a boiler in, or something. It needs to be fixed. Our health department needs to be fixed. The permit department, building department needs to be fixed. I'm gonna end it right there because I know there's more to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you need me to repeat the question, or?
If you would like to, but I don't think I need to.
For the members, as our infrastructure ages, there's obviously need to replace it and upgrade it. Has the city gone beyond its safe borrowing limits? If not, how much more borrowing is prudent, and what would our priorities be? It's gone beyond the safe borrowing limits. How would you, as mayor, propose that the city function in the future?
So there's a whole mess of things tangled up in here, but let's just come right to the...
You have 2 minutes.
Did you say 200 minutes? Our total debt service as a percentage of our budget is trending down. Our target is to be at 10%. That is typically, if you start rising above, you get to 11 or 12%, you're going to lose your AAA bond ratings. I think where our budget right now is at 9.1%. Our total indebtedness for bonding between the revenue obligation bonds and the general GO bonds is about the same as when I started, which would be consistent with the debt service actually trending down a little bit. We have a little bit more capacity, but not much. It is actually, when I talk about structural change, we completely overhauled how we've been doing road maintenance. As was pointed out by another gentleman, we weren't maintaining our roads, which was increasing the long-term cost of doing the roads. And I will tell you that I'm sitting on a number of engineering projects and I'm saying, you're not engineering this to a low cost, you're engineering this to a higher, bigger number. And as a result, we've been throwing capital dollars away. But as we go forward, I'm trying to make those structural changes in how we do our engineering projects and also the structural changes in the road. And as you can see now, we're putting a lot of effort into repaving our roads. What's the other major infrastructure? It is the infrastructure behind the schools. In the government center, we replaced the chiller on the roof. That was a $2 million project. And one of the things I'm doing is telling them you got to reorder the projects. You don't do the roof and then do the chiller, which then destroys the roof. You do the chiller and then do the roof. And so we're trying to get this thing sorted out. The big challenge ahead, I think, is behind the scenes, the infrastructure in our 21 schools, many of which are very old, and the capital bonding that we're going to need. So we're going to manage it. We just did $80 million for a police station and a school, and we've managed that, and we'll continue to manage it forward. It's a manageable situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the order of our next question will be Mr. Zito, Mr. Martin, Mr. Michelson. And it too regards finances. And it begins with a proposition that we can all agree on. Our state budget is a mess. In the event that the state budget, well, let me begin by saying, do you anticipate that the state budget resolution, which will come hopefully shortly, will result in Stamford receiving less money from Hartford? And if so, how would you propose to run the city with less money?
Sorry, buddy. Okay, if you notice I'm not coming. Oh, that's not nice. 30 seconds. My name ain't Dave. Come on now. I'm short-winded. I'm not coming up. I'm not coming up with any paperwork in my hand, folks. I'm gonna tell you just like it is. Oh, thank you. Dan Malloy was a hometown boy, became mayor, did what he had to do. Not gonna badger the guy. He did himself in, okay? I'm gonna leave it alone that way, okay? We are in a hole, yes. Our police officers, our fire department, anybody in retirement, highway department, they're moving out of here because they are taxing the retirement, your pensions. They're moving to Florida, Carolinas, Tennessee. I know that for a fact. We are in trouble here, folks. And what I will do is I have 2 qualified guys, one of them may be in this room, that I will, if I become mayor, take them on board and say, first things first. First, I got a clean house. Too many people getting paid too much. Then ask them, what can we do to how to run this town? Too many equipment being brought and sitting, not doing nothing. Folks, there's more dirt in this town than you know that there is tonight. You may giggle, we may laugh right now. You're thinking that I don't know what I'm talking about? Talk to me after the debate, and I'll tell you anything you want to know, because I'm the guy that goes around in the garages, the people tell me, the other employees tell me what's going on. But these 2 gentlemen that I will hire, one of them is in this room. He's very good. And I'm not going to reveal him. But let me tell you something, folks. I can make this town run straight and good. And you're going to say, how's this guy going to do it? He's a businessman. I'm not a politician. I'm a working man. Remember that. All you folks here are workers. Your hands are clean. You got what you got. You had to work with your hands. So think about it. Don't sit there and laugh. Don't. Because I can tell you right now, you'll be surprised what I can do for you. Thank you. And beep, 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 beep.
Mr. Martin, we start with the proposition that our state budget's a mess. There's a likelihood that we will receive less money from Hartford in the future. If that's the case, how would you resolve it?
We are expecting a reduction in funding from the state. I think the governor's proposal had us at -2. I think the Democratic proposal had us at -4, and the Republican had us at 0. But in all 3 proposals, we can't really tell what's going on because there are grants that come through state agencies, and those state agencies were cut. So we're expecting a reduction in funding from the state this year. We've been preparing for it. Ever since I took office, the tax increases, the rate at which we increase have been coming down. And I will tell you, I want them lower than they've been. But we are first taking care of our financial integrity in this city, and that was one of our responsibilities, and we've done that, and we have not cut services. I will do the same thing. We have built in a contingency to deal with what we expect the state might cut back, and we don't think it will substantially impact our services. And unlike some other towns, I will not come back and ask for another tax increase mid-year because of the shortage in the funding. I tell you, we're doing a lot of things behind the scenes to prepare for that. We're being very careful with our budget spending this year. I do not expect a reduction in services because we've made preparations. We could see it coming, and that's what we took care of. Thank you.
Mr. Michelson?
You can read it again. You did such a good job. Is that what lawyers do?
We all agree that the state budget's a mess. I crossed it off.
Okay.
And that Stamford may receive less money than it currently does. If that's the case, how would you resolve that as mayor?
Well, I started answering that before. First of all, we have to really start looking in-house and benchmark the services we provide, number of employees we have. We've got to make sure our departments are run efficiently. We've got to make sure our supervisors know their jobs and there are not multiple supervisors and overlapping. We also have some 48 different town departments. We've got to see and when you have that many departments, you've got to see if there's any overlap, how to consolidate those departments. In our Public Works Department, we have some very expensive equipment, expensive to maintain, expensive to purchase, and expensive to operate. Maybe we should be considering outsourcing some of those functions. There are a lot of things we should be looking at. The tax increases during the past few years, or during the past 3.5 years more specifically, have gone up over 12%. That's almost 3 times the cost of living, which has hovered around just under 4%. These kind of tax increases are hard to absorb, and our seniors and a lot of our younger working families are really having trouble absorbing those kind of interest rate, those kinds of taxes. So we've really got to look internally. It's time to really start, I won't say necessarily downsize, but we've got to start figuring out how to deliver our services more efficiently. Our pension funds have to start generating revenues. We can't tolerate these kind of losses, and those funds must be supervised by professional people, or at least there should be professional folks who know how to run those investment funds. The rate of borrowing has to stop. We've already, as I said, the liabilities, according to the official statement, have increased by over $200 million. They're now up to just a little over 900 million. This can't continue. We're really shooting ourselves in the foot. So we've got to just figure out and be very, very prudent even with our capital projects. Thank you.
Gentlemen, for the next question, which concerns, I would say, economic development maybe, the order is Mr. Zito, Mr. Michelson, and Mr. Martin. There's been much discussion in the community about overdevelopment in Stamford. First part of the question is, do you believe this is true? And if so, for what parts of Stamford? All of it, or neighborhoods in particular? And in your response, we're going to ask that you specifically refer to development that has occurred in the Central Business District and in the South End, and specifically the Harbor Point development. So, Mr. Zito.
Again, no paperwork in my hand. Folks, Stamford grew too much. Too much. Okay. We got building going down in the harbor. This is all started with Malloy. Okay? I hate to bash on them, but it all started with Malloy. Think back. When all this started, because I worked for Franklin Glass and I saw a model of City of Stamford. And I saw all this happening already, okay? Too much is being built, and you ask for different areas all over. Illegal apartments or too much. I'm going away what you guys want to hear. But we had a fire near Stamford Hospital, 32 people are out. Do you know how bad it is out here in the city of Stamford? Anybody here know how bad it is with the illegal apartments? Does anybody? Raise your hand. Does anybody know? Yes, no? Come on. Please talk. Raise your hand. Don't be shy here. Okay. It's all over the place. All right. At Mayor Martin's office, there's been complaints going on, calling. Nothing's being done. I know for guarantee because I made 3 phone calls. Nothing got done. I set it up. But I set up the houses that I know that are overpopulated. We need to get on this right now. Mayor Martin, I'm sorry. I know this is not a bashing thing, but when you ran for mayor 4 years ago, you beat us out. We had a good lunch, the ham and cheese sandwich that you brought me. I asked you if you knew what a blight officer was, and you didn't. So I explained to you what it is. Okay? We need to hire blight officers, enforce the law, so we don't have another Chopin fire, which those 2 guys still got a job here. Cost us $17 to $19 million, okay? Now let me tell you, I can keep going on and on and on about this. This got to stop, folks. We're business owners in this room. We're a family. These people do work for us. It has to stop. We need the enforcement to go out there. Do what we gotta do, stop the fire so we don't have another Chopin disaster. And these two gentlemen that are still employed should be arrested, but they're not. They go to a Hartford courthouse and say, I don't remember, I don't know, I don't remember, and this guy's gonna beat me up. Thank you. Oh, wait, hold on.
Mr. Michaels. And to remind you, the topic is overdevelopment in Stamford. Is it throughout the city or in parts of city? And refer in your response, if you will, to the central business district and the south end.
Specifically.
If you could touch on that, yes.
In planning school, this might be a semester project, by the way, but I will
You
try
have
to.
2 minutes.
I know.
The whole 2 minutes.
Okay. The whole 2 minutes.
You can start now.
Well, the purpose of the land use boards and land use regulations is to promote orderly development and essentially prevent congestion. We've had a practice that's been going on here for probably more than 2 decades of basically accommodating essentially overdevelopment, and we've kind of institutionalized what would be in planning parlance something called spot zoning. What happens is large projects come in. They come in and they're basically essentially non-conforming projects to our regulations without benefit of some kind of either text change or map change. The purpose of the text change and the map change has been routinely for overdevelopment, increased density, and reduced parking standards. The traffic reports come in, and this project is going to have much of an impact. A second project, not going to have much of an impact. You do this for a decade and a half, projects do have an impact. When you asked, and to try to be brief on this, when we asked developers how their garages were parked, we got very, very nebulous kinds of answers. And believe me, I know the mayors, the planning, land use boards are doing a study on this, but there are national standards. There are more parking institutes. There's the Eno Foundation, the Urban Land Institute, and the list goes on of all kinds of work that has been done on parking and standardized parking regulations. What was going on in this town is, now, let me backtrack a second. When you approve a project, you approve it with enough parking to accommodate the use. Very simple process. Now, what's been going on in this town is we approve projects. And what happens is the land use applicant goes through a garage and he goes through at 12, 1 o'clock. He says, oh, this garage of the project we just finished building is only 80% occupied, so we can cut the parking requirement back 20%. And this has been going on. And it took me a while to realize wherever we approve a project, we always create more congestion. The reason is because instead of accommodating the uses generated by that structure, the developers were only providing one parking space and charging for the second. You get these young families, they say, well, we'll take the one space, we'll park on the street. Lo and behold, we have tremendous parking problems. I went down to the south end, to be very specific, and I've asked the owners of that property, why is it that we don't, if you're parked properly, why we have this congestion in the street? And we asked repeatedly for copies or information on the number of cars generated per dwelling unit. That information was never forthcoming. So we're never accommodating or not accommodating the needs that are being generated by uses. And I can go on and on this. They're holding the red flag up for me, but I'd be glad to discuss this further at any time.
I got it. So a number of years ago, more than a couple, I think I was in a Thanksgiving parade. This was really before the SSD really got going. And I remember I was walking down the street with Gabe DeLuca, and we were looking left and right at building after building that was basically vacant in downtown Stamford. And we've also heard the infamous stories of Bobby Valentine chasing the prostitutes from out in front of his place. On the south end, 10 years ago, that was abandoned warehouses, brownfields. There wasn't public access to the waterfront. When you look at both the downtown and the south end, I'm not going to claim that everything is bright, perfect, and rosy, but I will tell you this. Both of those areas are substantially improved over what they were in the recent past. No question about it. And the continued development in that area is not putting pressure on the city in terms of its water infrastructure and its WPCA infrastructure. It is actually increasing the taxable grand list, which is part of our AAA rating and has helped a little bit reduce the taxes. They are not adding kids to our schools of any sizable magnitude. Those in more intense developments there are part of what Stamford is succeeding at, and which many other mayors and first selectmen are jealous of Stamford, because people are trying to get to downtown Stamford. They're trying to get to the south end. Those apartment buildings keep going up and they keep getting full almost immediately, and some of them are empty nesters. Some of them are our kids and grandkids that are coming back, and some of them are people new to Stamford. Some of them are new to Stamford, but not new to Connecticut. Having said all of that, I believe that our traffic situation has worsened over the years. And I tell you, when I came into office, as far as I was concerned, we were 10 to 20 years behind in traffic safety and in traffic management. And since then, I reorganized the whole transportation function. I created a new head of traffic and parking. We now, for the first time, as of I think 3 weeks ago, have 2 city and traffic engineers instead of 1. We are repaving the roads, but we are working on a traffic synchronization system, which hadn't been worked on since 1990. There's a lot of improvements that need to be made. I'm not denying that traffic has gotten worse. I don't know how much of it is development and how much of it is the fact that we just haven't managed it well. And any city has got to manage it well before it starts telling property owners, we're not going to let you do what you think you ought to do. Thank you.
Thank you. The order of our next question is Mr. Martin, Mr. Zito, Mr. Michelson. The question concerns a related topic, economic development. The question is, would business and economic development be a priority under your administration? And if so, specifically, what would your strategy be?
I think I've touched on this already. If you don't have jobs, you just might as well kiss it away. 50 years ago, 60 years ago, this was a manufacturing town. Clairol, Yale in town, American Cyanamid, Pitney Bowes, they've all left, and they're not coming back. And it's disappointing, but that's the reality of life. We had a period of time when we had large corporate offices. We had a lot of corporate headquarters here in Stamford. We still have several, but not as many as we've had. And what we're headed toward is establishing a climate that the companies want to be in. And so it's a little bit different. Rather than directly appealing to the corporations, I'm trying to make this a place where their workforce wants to live, where they want to be. And it's making a difference. So GE left, as we mentioned, Alexicon left, Aetna left, but Indeed is expanding. Hinkle's moving to Stamford. Vineyard Vines is moving to Stamford. Synchrony Financial is expanding. Charter Communications adding 1,100 jobs, just added the other day. And that's what I pointed in the paper. The city of Stamford is a success. Now, I'm going to quickly say that our vacancy rate, our commercial vacancy rate, is still too high. It's been stubbornly remaining in the 25 to 30% range. Some of that is because the UBS building, which wasn't counted before because there were a few people in it, is now counted. But bottom line is we're moving in the right direction, and the state has recognized that when it came to Amazon, saying that Stamford should be one of the communities that is competing for Amazon. And I happen to know there are some things out there which I cannot say, but fundamentally I believe we're on the right track for attracting those large corporations, which in turn provide the driving impetus to a lot of small businesses. And I can tell you, we're opening small businesses throughout the city. That part is good, and that's why our unemployment rate dropped to 3.8% in August, while the rest of the state sort of drifted sideways or slightly up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, Vineyard Vines has already been here, just to let you know. Mr. Martin does have an upper hand on this because he's the mayor. He has his little birdies flying around and telling him who's coming in and what's not. Okay, he has an upper hand on me on this, but I have an upper hand on a lot of the other things, which I'm not going to touch right now. But yes, we do have companies coming in, coming out. Whoever went to West Hill, or any of the high school gentlemen that are here that went with me, how many companies that were the two buildings on Long Ridge Road, how many times that changed names, how many companies go in and out? Why? Because the governors in the past and the mayors in the past always gave the gimmies. And they changed their name, they beat the taxes, they beat this. If I become mayor, and Amazon or anybody else that comes in, I'm gonna ask for, hey, what can you give me a warranty? What guarantee you give me you can stay here? Everybody has a hold. There's a loophole in everything. We all know that. Who's lawyers, who's not lawyers. There's always a loophole in something. So a company can tell you they're gonna be here 25 years. Are they gonna be here? You never know. Mr. Dudley's on the Board of Finance. Mr. Dudley may tell me one day, say, yeah, somebody else is coming in. Well, what kind of guarantee? He can't tell you. Anybody can't tell you what kind of guarantee these big companies or Fortune 500 companies are going to be here. Bridgewater. Oh, they wanted the boatyard, blah, blah, blah. Bridgewater's already been in Stamford for a while now, folks. There's things that if some people here know about Bridgewater, let me tell you, there's a lot of things going on. Pitney Bowes, that's all BLT. They're all buddies. They're all coming in doing what they want to do, play games, buy buildings, do this, do that. Every mayor that was here, when they left as being mayor, what job did they have? Thank you.
Well, thank you. So our next question relates to development also. It's, excuse me.
Okay, well, got that?
No, and I apologize. Would you like me to repeat?
Sure,
the
go
question?
ahead.
Would business development and economic development be a priority under your administration? And if so, specifically, what would your strategy be?
Well, absolutely, it would be a priority. And it's a tricky one at that because, as Mayor Martin pointed out, it's tough to get businesses to stay here. We've gone through the whole gamut from being a factory community to one of the 3 top locations for corporate 500 companies, and basically we've had a revolving door. One of the biggest problems we have, the way I see it, is the fact, or 2 big problems. One is our proper personal property tax for business, for chairs, pencils, whatever it is. This is not something that's unique to Stamford. And businesses will always be driven by bottom line. When they no longer compete competitively, they look for those areas or those regions or those opportunities where they can. One of the problems we have here in Connecticut is the fact that as I said, we have a revolving door. Basically, we give very nice subsidies for businesses to come, and all states do that. We have their development banks, they have their loans, they have their grant programs. The problem here is when the subsidies come back, run out, they come back for another set of subsidies. If they get them, fine. If they don't, they leave. When you go down south and get a subsidy, okay, the subsidy runs out. You may get a building built. You may get some kind of other opportunity or benefit. You're in a low-cost environment. Here, you're in a very, very high-cost environment. And the only way it makes sense to be here is if there's some unique geographic reason. So, well, and the other part of this question is state policy. The state has made, our tax programs here are just not conducive to businesses to stay. And it really has to be a very multifaceted emphasis. I know when I go down south and I talk to business owners, they have tax structures that are much more favorable, and they don't pick winners and losers, but they do look to see the impact taxes have, the impact regulations have. Our utility costs here are very, very high also. Those also impact businesses. I see my red flag. But yes, it would be a priority, and it's something that unfortunately we do have to work with the state because the state sets the overall tone.
Thank you. We're going to take a diversion to a hypothetical fun question that has to do with development. Today in the city of Norwalk, a major new retail mall is being built. It's going to be anchored by a Bloomingdale's and a Nordstrom's, and it's scheduled to open in October 2019. Do you believe that this development in Norwalk will have an adverse effect on the Stamford Town Center? And if you were mayor, what would you be advising the owners of the Stamford Town Center today?
Who's first? My first?
No, it's Barry, excuse me, followed by David, and lastly, Mr. Z.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, so just repeat it again?
Yep. Today in Norwalk, a major new mall is being built. It's going to be a Class A mall. It's going to be the centerpiece of retail. Do you believe that will have an adverse effect on the Stamford Town Center? And if so, how would you be advising, or would you be advising, the owners of the Stamford Town Center?
Okay, well, that's a tough question, actually, because retail right now is a lot of people just buying online. That's simple. A lot of people going to the Westchester Mall. Are they competing with the Westchester Mall? Are they competing with our mall? Our mall, one of the biggest problems it has, it's basically, as we all know, it's a fortress. It doesn't relate to our business district. There's been a lot of turnover in our mall. I see there are a lot of empty stores. I think our mall is going to have a tough opportunity. I would look for a more multi-purpose use for that mall in conjunction with retail. As I said, it doesn't seem to be able to keep or anchor any of the major stores. Fifth Avenue is out. Macy's is out. And as I said, there seems to be a lot of vacancies in there. I don't know how they, as I said, it's a retail and it's tough. Even downtown, we have a lot of trouble maintaining anything other than restaurants. I think we are going to be in a rough situation. One of the things that can be done is essentially having the mall open up into our downtown and really rethinking how pedestrian traffic moves, automobile traffic, and people's shopping habits. But retail is going to be a very, very hard, and I'm not a retail expert, but
Thank you. The second to answer that question is Mr. Martin.
Well, I don't know that I want to say this out loud, but I think this is going to be the last mall built in America. We know that traditional retail goods stores are under pressure. You can get it online from Amazon, of all people, but many others. And so there's been a lot of pressure, and a lot of malls are under general pressure. This mall that they're building in Norwalk has some attractive features, and I'm sure it will be successful, but I believe at the same time it will put pressure on all the other surrounding malls in this region, which would include the Stamford Town Center Mall. Guess what, guys? Competition is a fact of life. Competition actually makes the overall economy better. Now, I want our mall to succeed, and I'm happy to go in and have discussions, but I got news for you. I'm not an expert on running malls. I'm not an expert in repositioning malls. I happen to agree that way back in the 70s and 80s, in the 80s particularly, we built a series of corporate office buildings in a mall that were all sort of, to use Barry's words, fortresses. They were isolated from the rest of the community, and I think that's worked against us as time has evolved. And I'd like to see them open up that mall. The question is, are they willing to make that investment? Because it's a substantial investment. Now, we're working on a plan to enhance Veterans Park, which will enhance that side of the mall. I think many of you guys know about it, and we are hopeful that we will be kicking off a groundbreaking for a new Veterans Park that will both honor the veterans, be a safer environment, and be better in terms of the commercial activities around that park. Can we get the other side of the mall opened up? And I'm happy to have conversations with them, but I've learned something. There's a lot of things I know very well, and I'm running the city. I do not run malls, and I'm not going to enforce or impose my will on those people. We've got to create opportunities for them where they want to be here and they want to invest, and that's where my head is at. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Susita. You're good. Don't move.
Folks, I think when that mall was built, I don't think these two candidates lived in Stamford. You guys know what was there? What movie theater was there where the mall was? No. The Plaza. I was 12 years old when there used to be Main Street, used to run right through there. Folks, just telling you right now, my two candidates, they know their things, but they don't know history. I know history. The Trumbull Mall is built with green concrete in certain areas. And there's someone in this room knows that too. Okay? Our mall was supposed to be torn down, quote unquote, and made it as an arena so we can get bands, monster trucks, whatever, just like Bridgeport has. That's what Stamford, that was that mall supposed to be. That mall is in like a Fort Knox. And that was correct that they said. All right? Again, Amazon's coming. You can buy anything on a computer. Anything you can buy, Amazon, anything. Yes, finance, the clothing department, everybody is hurting. That mall is bad. It's got bad going in, bad going out. How are you going to get in? During the wintertime, you can't go up the ramp. Okay, the parking meters are crazy. The security is, Mayor Martin says about the veterans. We had a poor handicapped person that was attacked over there. His money was taken from him. That is a bad security area. And I saw that when I was walking through there over there. I pinpointed it out. Stamford Mall is big trouble. But are we worried about Norwalk Mall? Yes. It needs to be redamped. Somehow get the traffic flowing around there better. Get people in, get people out. I think Norwalk Mall will not be a threat to us. But if we get the traffic moving out and who we got into the Stamford Mall, who's attracting them? Who's attracting the people going to Norwalk? You got to find out what stores are going in there, and could we have them come into Stamford stores? And Stamford local business are good people. I see it. I'm going to keep going. Small businesses in Stamford, they are doing good. There's a turnaround. I see it. Stamford Toys, they're doing great. He got a little place around there. He's always busy. I see him busy. I see other small businesses finally start to pick up. Folks, Stamford is getting there. We were down in the dumps. Now we're turning around. We're coming back up. But yes, the Stamford Mall needs help. If I was the mayor, if I could meet the person that's running the mall, taking care of the mall, and just straighten out the problem and give a little bit of a facelift. We got the new restaurants down there. They're doing great. And what we got to do is Macy's need to be cleaned up over that area. That looks like rubbish. That needs to be cleaned up. If we clean up Macy's and try to help them, or not help them, but Macy's big enough. If they could reface themselves, we could be good in the Stamford Mall. And we don't have to worry about Norwalk. New York, White Plains, yeah, those malls are big. But Norwalk, I'm not sweating Norwalk. Thank you.
We're going to have two more questions, and then we're going to ask each of these gentlemen.
Closing remarks.
But to the credit of this organization, we could have 20 more questions, but we're not young guys. Katz is a young guy. The order of the next question will be Mr. Zito, Mr. Martin, and Mr. Michelson. And it regards public safety. Stamford consistently ranks as one of the safest cities in America. Do you believe Stamford truly is safe? If not, how would you improve public safety? And if you do believe it's safe, how would you ensure that that measure of safety continues?
Look at the size of me, 6 foot, 280. I can help it out, just joking around. Stamford could be one of the biggest mayors, but Martin's taller than me. The city of Stamford is doing very well. The police department is doing very well. They have a problem in the union carrying a Narcan. The Narcan is, it helps the people that are overdosing. The Narcan helps them to save their life. There's a lot of things with Stamford going on, but the Stamford got a great SWAT team, Bloodhound, they got the dogs, very good. I am 100% behind Stamford PD. They are doing great jobs. There's open cases that are being closed, but everybody got a knot once in a while, here and there. There's cars parked in, and this is going to go in a lot of things, but there's cars parked in the city Stamford streets where they shouldn't be parking. We got all this parking problem. There's a lot more going on. But real quick, there's cars parked, they're illegally registered. They're parked, they have handguns in there and drugs in there. People come out of New York, come in the middle of the night, boom, put them in there, and then the drug dealers come in, get the keys, get the drugs, get out. How do I know that? You guys see what I do around 12 o'clock at night or 1 o'clock at night, driving around, see who knows who what. Remember, I'm a street person. I know everybody walking around the streets, and there's video cameras on people's buildings, see people come in and out. And they know about it. Stamford PD know about it. They're scoping them out. They're catching them one at a time. Trust me, folks, the city of Stamford PD will do a lot better if I become mayor, because I will hire more Stamford PD. There's a way of hiring, and they're worried about the budgets. Stamford PD will be great, and then they are great. They got great people working for them, and the supervisors. Mr. Lombardi, did I do good? Thank you.
Mr. Martin.
I think there's a wet spot on the floor over there. I'm almost falling down. So let's talk about public safety. I think you know that our ambulance systems, known as SIMS, is probably the best ambulance system in all of New England. Our fire department is terrific, and we still have difficulties between the volunteers and the professional services, but we are mitigating against those. I think, as you well know, when I took office, there were lawsuits by the volunteers against the city. We've settled those lawsuits. We are in arbitration now with one of the volunteer companies. We'll probably get a ruling on that before the end of the month, maybe. But we're making progress on that. One of the things is within a few weeks, we're going to be talking about the new air breathing apparatus that we have for our entire fire department. He was mentioning a little bit about Narcan. We have an opioid crisis in this country, and we are now having Narcan, and it's routinely being pushed by the ambulance service, the fire department. We've added it to the police department, and I actually have Narcan in my car. We are building a police station, long overdue. We've installed GPS in the police cars, the patrol cars. When I took office in 911, they actually didn't know where the patrol cars were electronically. They would only call in back and forth. We are testing body cameras for the police. I believe that we will be announcing a selection of a body camera before the end of the month. We have put up surveillance cameras in 8 city parks, and where we've put up surveillance cameras, the crime activity has dropped. We announced the Gun Stopper program last year. We've had 10 rewards given for turning in illegal guns. We've hired 50 new police officers while I've been mayor, and now brings us to the highest number of sworn officers in the city in, I think, a decade. We are the safest city in New England. Last year, we had some gun violence. I think you know very well that I am very much in favor of common sense gun control, and we can just go about that for a while, but nonetheless, we remain the safest city in New England, and our violent crime rate has dropped significantly since last year after us putting in several different programs, including the surveillance cameras, the Gun Stopper program, the program we're doing at Yearwood Center and with Domus, and the police do a terrific job. They really do, and when we pay them overtime, it's well worth it. Thank you.
Do you have the question, or would you like to repeat it?
I think I can handle it. If I miss any part of it, I'm sure you'll chime in.
Ask me if you need.
Okay. Yes, I do think Stamford is a safe city, but the delivery of police services is something I question. I'm glad to hear from Mayor Martin that we hired 50 new officers. I hadn't heard that number before, because it is a problem delivering services in certain neighborhoods. And certain neighborhoods feel that they're tremendously underserved on the east side, west side, and also to get services up sometimes into North Stamford. So we certainly need to consider a rejiggering of how we deploy our police, because at the moment we have, especially some of our younger officers, the guys at the bottom of the totem pole, they get the opportunity to work 2 and 3 shifts per week extra, which may sound like they get a lot of overtime, but actually, from what the officers tell me, it leads to morale problems. They're young men. They want to be with their families. So it is staffing is an issue. But the rejiggering is important. And as I said, we've really got to clamp down on certain neighborhoods, especially on the west side and the east side of town, where it's not the level of safety isn't what it is in many other parts of town. Thank you.
So we've reached our final question, and what would be a debate about Stamford without talking about traffic? So our final question regards traffic. And the order of answering is Mr. Michelson, followed by Mr. Zito, and finally Mr. Martin. So the question is, people complain about traffic. Is it really that bad? Is it bad all the time on every street? Quantify the problem if there is one, and give us your solutions. And please be specific. And it's Mr. Michelson, Mr. Zito, and Mr. Martin. Is there a problem?
In 2 minutes? Absolutely, there's a problem.
Okay, you're the first part of the question's done.
Where to start? I'll start with Long Ridge and High Ridge Road. For almost a decade, we've been hearing from traffic consultants using state data, traffic volumes are down. It takes longer to get from one end of the city to the other. We've also been hearing, traffic volumes are down. The other issue is, if traffic volumes are down, why is it taking longer to get from one end of the town to the other? Sequencing and timing is one issue. But also, we're seeing a proliferation of beyond timing, what you call the signalization at the individual light corners. We have more phases at each intersection. It takes a lot longer to get through those phases. It used to be when I was in school many years ago, we used to talk about the efficient flow of traffic and balancing pedestrian flow with bicyclists, not so much a big issue then, and automobiles. Today we look at traffic calming, how to slow cars down. But as we start restricting traffic and traffic flow, and it takes longer, people get more anxious, and more aggressive in their driving. The number of people running red lights is increased astronomically. I don't know what the police records are on accidents, but we've all witnessed it. The longer it takes someplace, and we've probably all done it ourselves. We'd see that light turning yellow, we gun it to get through it because we're going to know we're going to wait an inordinate amount of time at the next one. We're also seeing a lot of placement of new traffic devices. That isn't always the best thing. Just having them all over, all it does is slow traffic down. You need efficient flow. I'm not sure where the design is coming up or the overall pattern. There are sciences and metrics to use, but we seem to have very inconsistent spacing, and there's a lot that can be done through proper planning over time, which we don't seem to be doing at all. So it's a complex problem. It certainly could be, we could be handling it and managing it better, and just putting traffic lights up at every intersection is not the answer. It's a matter of, it's more, there are a lot of other considerations, including where you put curb cuts, how you align intersections, but there are many, many considerations, and I think we could do a lot better job and a lot less inexpensively. Another issue, what I see we're starting to do is put intersections in the middle of streets, which is another which is really an undesirable traffic control type of issue.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, I know we all want to go home. Hey, how about those bicycle signs on the pavement, guys? Huh, you don't see me on a bicycle in the newspaper. You know, that one guy that was in front of Mr. Martin, at least Mr. Martin had a hat on, his vest on, and we were supposed to teach our kids the safety. Where was that guy's hat and vest? I just want to blow that out here. Yes, the traffic is unbelievably nuts. I'm on the road every day like you gentlemen are also. Okay, it is nuts. How about hiring traffic enforcement? New York City has traffic enforcement, park enforcement, all this enforcement. But I think we can do something by hiring traffic enforcement and getting the lights straightened out, all the lights in meter. Okay, if you go down exit 6 and you stand there, you'll be there for years to go through the light. All right, 2 people got killed on Summer Street in Hoyt. Why? Because if you hit that button, the left side says, okay, you can walk, here comes a car, make a right turn, bam, or a left turn, bam, run you right over. Greenwich has the problem. You hit the button, all 4 stop. Even if you're going the wrong way, it stops. We can do that, it's very easy. I know the traffic guys, I already talked to them already. It ain't that much money. Folks, the traffic is bad. I'm all over the place. Tom, you're spilled. The Stamford Police Department doing the best they could. In the traffic department, again, they're down guys, trying to fix the signals, trying to do this, trying to do that. Trust me, there's a sign that says no turn on red, we'll flipped upside down, the guy was there, boom, put the truck up, flipped it back, everything's no problem. Shopping centers, you're having problems getting in, getting out, Mr. Singari has probably problems with people down Japan. That's a mess down there. Go down Japan Avenue, make a right, go up the Cove Road. Traffic is bad, but we gotta get somebody out there, hey, this way, let's keep going, keep going around, go around. It's very simple on traffic, but I didn't hire a guy from New York City for 2 years, paid him $100 and something thousand, and what did he do? I just told you how to fix even the stoplights or tell the people the crosswalks. Okay, folks, just telling you, put this in your head. Who are we hiring? Thank you.
Thank you. So I talked about this a little bit earlier. I left something out. I already knew when we took office that the number of pedestrian and bicycle accidents and fatalities were trending upward across the nation. And whether that's because young people are more likely to ride bicycles everywhere in the country, including Stamford, or whether that's or because they're walking, or is it because there's more distracted driving by both drivers and distracted walking by people with their earbuds in, can't hear, and they're looking down at their cell phones. Regardless, that's been the trend nationwide. And we set out immediately on a Street Smart program. You've heard of it. And there's a number of things we're doing to try to improve the safety of our streets. And it's paying off. We have had fatalities for years in Stamford. And we've had one tragedy this year. That's fewer people that have been killed on our roads than have been in any year in the last decade. There was a man who was walking at night across High Ridge Road, then he wasn't at an intersection. But we're working on it. So we're doing LPI timing on Summer Street, where the one person was killed at Hoyt and Summer Street. We're putting up the hawk signal in front of Stamford High School, where that young woman was unfortunately killed. It's interesting, we had already identified that as a dangerous spot that we would be working on, and our traffic engineer at the time was there 2 weeks before that accident, taking traffic counts and everything else. I reorganized the department. As I mentioned before, for the first time ever, we have 2 traffic engineers. We have those new no right turn on red signs, and they're not all working perfectly, but we're working in that direction. The guy that he says did nothing started our traffic synchronization plan. He got the funding so that we're not actually paying for it. It's paid out of grants. And we've started that program, and we'll be implementing the synchronization this coming summer. We're also starting a number of intersections that have taken forever. Oaklawn is going to be started finally. Atlantic and Henry is going to be started finally. We're working on the West Avenue and West End. We're working on Greenwich and Pulaski and down at Selleck Street. We're getting these things done. But you want to know something? There's traffic in Greenwich. There's traffic in Westport. And there's traffic in Norwalk. There's traffic on I-95 and the Merritt. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't do better, and I intend to do much better with the traffic from both a safety standpoint as well as a traffic flow standpoint, and that's what we're going to make happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen, now we're going to give you your free time when you can rebut, amplify, explain, or sum up. And we're going to do it in the reverse order of the introductory remarks, which means Mr. Martin, you will go first. Mr. Michelson, you will go second. And Mr. Zito, you will go last. 2 minutes, gentlemen.
2 minutes? Oh, man.
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. If you'd like longer, we'll give it to you.
No,
You
these
will
guys
go
want to
last.
go home. These guys
And
want to
you
go
will
home.
be sit talking to an
The number of things that have been said that are in the fact department, it would be hard to keep track of in 2 minutes. It might be 200 minutes. I will say that my opponents seem to be talking a lot about issues which are really the state, or issues that are a decade old, as opposed to what's happening right here, what's been happening in the last 4 years, and what's happening right now. So what is happening? Well, our downtown and South End are alive. The museum, the Arboretum, the library, and the senior center are all thriving. They've all been supported by the city. Our parks are improving, all the way from North Stamford and Schofield Town Park down to Mill River Park. and what we're planning to do in Veterans Park. We continue to be the safest city in New England, and we just hired 50 officers, the highest number of sworn officers in roughly a decade. It's not by accident. Unlike other struggling cities in Connecticut, we are a success story. And with all success comes a new set of issues. And I do not deny that we have to do a better job of managing growth, a better job of managing traffic. We are underway with trying to get studies to better understand what's happening to parking requirements in our neighborhoods where there hasn't been that much development. We are working on how to better enforce our zoning enforcement and our blight. We're working on those things and we'll get them done. We are building Stamford's future, both wisely and responsibly. Our finances are strong, our city is safe, we're building a new school, we're building a new police station, we are paving our roads, our city is vibrant, and we're even filling the infamous hole in the ground, one shovel at a time. No, it's not all perfect. Much remains to be done, and quite frankly, that's why I'm running. I think we're getting back to a good path. And rather than dividing our community with false or exaggerated claims about Stamford's shortcomings and not really offering solutions other than I promise, I hope everyone in our city will help us move forward. We've got a lot of struggles ahead, but we are moving in the right direction. And I want to thank you for your support, and I want to thank you for hosting this debate this evening. Thank you very much.
Mr. Michelson.
I envision a Stamford that's aspirational and responsive to its residents, a community where citizens are listened to and not summarily marginalized or ignored when they appear before boards. My first order of business will be to promote the orderly growth and development of the city. I will fight to respect the rule of law to protect Stamford and our neighborhoods, and will relentlessly pursue policies to create a robust and business environment. I'll make sure that we have a police force that is properly sized to provide for efficient delivery of police services and neighborhood safety. As mayor, I'll reorganize the land use departments so that nobody hangs around for hours and are shuffled between departments, then told to go home, or is lost in a never-ending maze of bureaucratic inefficiency. And those that violate the regulations do not follow the rules with impunity. This will not continue. I've been involved in all phases of development. I'm an urban planner by profession. I negotiated the railroad leases with the Connecticut Department of Transportation and implemented a parking authority complete with minibus operation for those unable to get station parking permits and renovated railroad station structures. I also planned and implemented a downtown for Fairfield Center, a business district that is active and thriving, a diverse district that offers a variety of retail uses and is properly sized to the town of Fairfield. These were implemented through sound planning, business-favorable policies, conducive to growth and improvement, mutually beneficial business relationships, and a strong sense of civic pride. We have an unacceptable commercial vacancy rate of approximately 30%, and it has never taken longer to get from one end of the city to another. As mayor, I want to hear from you regularly. I want you to have a seat at the table. I will advocate and represent the whole of the people in the community. I will form a Mayor's Council of Neighborhood Organizations that will convene regularly to discuss and review important neighborhood issues. I will additionally form a Mayor's Council of Business Organizations to discuss and review issues to make certain we have a viable, productive, and profitable business community. Cuts and inefficiencies will take priority before any tax increases. It is absolutely and should never, and any tax increases that we do promulgate should never exceed the cost of living. I'll never stand before you and make any commitment to get elected that I have no intention of keeping. This election is not about me. It's about us. It's about taking back our city, and we can do this. I'm committed to Stamford, its people, its businesses, and its future. Every resident counts, every neighborhood counts, and every business counts. And if you're ready for change, I'm Barry Michelson. I'm running for mayor of this great city of Stamford, and I'm here to ask for your support. We all can make a difference. Please come out and make sure to vote on Election Day. Thank you.
Okay, guys, I took my jacket off. Ready to roll? Gonna tell you like it is. Yes, I'm John Zito. I'm running for mayor. You don't have to be a Democrat or Republican to vote. You vote for the right person for the right job. I gave you that spiel. Gentlemen, I'm not gonna look up at you. I'm gonna read my notes. Dyke Lane. We've been waiting 3 months to finish this job. Can't get permits. Here it is, black and white, okay? There's a lot of other things on that. But here it is. 3 months we couldn't get Dyke Lane, couldn't get a permit. It's a town job. Come on. Overbuilding. Folks, we're building too much here. We can't handle it. We lose them. We got no water. The sewer treatment plant, I told Martin 4 years ago when I ran for mayor, that it's too small. And again, it's too small. We're dumping water sewage in the sound, costing us money. Think about it, folks. Here's an easy one, and someone in this room is going to touch with it, okay? There's a gentleman that's been in lifelong lifelong resident. The gentleman worked for the city of Stamford and the Public Works Department. Someone didn't like the way he worked. He's a subcontractor. But the gentleman goes fishing at night. He takes his boat. His father and his grandfather were here. He takes a parking permit for a boat, to dump his boat in the water, right? This is something stupid, but I'm bringing it up to your attention. West Beach, he pulls a permit because that's the only place you can go. No, you can go to Cove. He can't go to Cove Beach to launch his boat because he gets a ticket. That's foolish. That's stupid. But here we go, folks. Here's some pictures. See this? This is our Stamford vacuum truck sucking out the sewage out of our catch basin. They're dumping it in our brush pile, okay? This is true facts because these pictures are from employees. Okay, they're not from me. They're from employees that they're tired of it. This is going upstate New York, getting into mulch into bags. EPA, I got a whole sheet over here. I'm gonna go on unless you guys wanna pick me up and throw me out of here, all right? This is poison. Someone gets a hand on this and call the EPA, City of Stamford, you're in trouble. How about leasing property off over here? Woodway Country Club, $1 a year for 3.5 acres, okay? You guys don't know about that, do you? There's 13, 14 acres up there of parkland that we can use for walking for taxpayers. That ain't being done. Okay. Oh, sorry, that was the wrong picture. That picture was Hague Avenue in the Old Town Police Department back there, secretly being sold. No one knows about that. Okay, and that's going to someone that used to work for the city. You got to pick me up and drag me out of here. Okay? And this is why I am. I tell you like it is. Folks, see this? This is the house that's caught on fire. They got told to take it down by certain people. Well, guess what? Oh, it wasn't safe enough. The only thing safe enough, not safe enough, is the chimney. Take the chimney down. Why did that thing get knocked down? You're laughing. $17 million of taxpayers' dollars. And then this right here, another public notice. The young lady that's working and doing Myrtle Avenue. Oh, he's gonna come beat me up now. Myrtle Avenue. They're doing her payroll, okay? Her new payroll is $143,000. The guy before her is getting $89,000. You folks, you're paying the taxes? See what I dig up? What did my other fellow candidates dig up? They didn't give you the facts. Thank you. John Zito, unaffiliated.
Well, on behalf of the State Street Debating Society, I'd like to just thank you all for everything you do and for being here tonight and for putting yourself through.